I was a devout Christian for years, and for most of that time, I had basically no interest in looking into any arguments for or against Christianity. I believed it was true, so why would I? But somehow I stumbled across C.S. Lewis's famous trilemma, Lord, Liar, Lunatic, and I have to admit, it was extremely convincing, because if Jesus really did claim to be God, it seems like there's only three options. Either he was telling the truth, he was the Lord, he was lying, or he was crazy. And since he doesn't seem like a liar or lunatic, Lord can start to feel like the only option left. But I think that conclusion depends on a few assumptions that are a lot harder to see than at first glance. Once you notice them and the other ways this trilemma is flawed, it starts to fall apart. Alright, let's get into it. So the original idea of the C.S. Lewis trilemma of Lord, Liar, Lunatic comes from his book, Mere Christianity. And the original passage reads, I'm trying here to prevent anyone saying the really foolish thing that people often say about him. I'm ready to accept Jesus as a great moral teacher, but I don't accept his claim to be God. That is the one thing we must not say. A man who was merely a man and said the sorts of things Jesus said would not be a great moral teacher. He would either be a lunatic, on the level with the man who says he is a poached egg, or else he would be the devil of hell. You must make your choice. Either this man was and is the Son of God, or else a madman or something worse. You can shut him up for a fool, you can spit at him and kill him as a demon, or you can fall at his feet and call him Lord and God. But let us not come with any patronizing nonsense about his being a great human teacher. He's not left that open to us. He did not intend to. Alright, so that passage is basically outlining what Lewis believes to be a great argument, or at least the foundation for a strong argument for the divinity of Jesus Christ. He's essentially attempting to use a process of elimination, something that you'd probably think would be a good way to do this, right? Basically, you just try to lay out all the possibilities and then go one by one, try to say, no, that doesn't seem right, that doesn't seem right, and eventually you come to just one conclusion. So we're going to do something now that I didn't do when I first heard this, which is actually look at why C.S. Lewis thinks he can't be a liar or a lunatic, his process of elimination, if you will. So first, he says he's not a lunatic because, and remember, I just read this passage, he said, if he was misguided in the fact that he believed he was some kind of divine being, assuming he claimed to be God, which I'll make a video on separately, which I think is debatable in itself, but assuming he did claim to be God, and he was mistaken in that regard, C.S. Lewis puts him on the same level as a man who believed he was a poached egg. I disagree. Every day, you make judgments. You make decisions subconsciously and consciously. You can say, oh, I think I am the fastest player in this room, or the best dressed person at this meetup, whatever. You might be misguided in that, and that's okay, because you're going to be misguided in some things. Does that put you on the same level as the guy that believed he's a poached egg? No. So clearly there's a scale of gradation here. You can be wrong about a claim about yourself or even others, and not be all the way in the level of sheer lunacy as this man that claims he's a poached egg. I would put Jesus somewhere on the same scale. Claiming to be God, yes, if you're wrong, that is a serious claim that you're wrong about, and certainly more so than I'm faster than this other person here. But I'd say it's easier to think that you're God than to think you're a poached egg. There's less intellectual gymnastics you have to put yourself through, or even just sheer, stupidity. For example, you gotta take it in the context, right? Christian apologists are always talking about you must take things in context. The Messiah, or Son of Man, as constantly referenced in the Bible, was supposed to be some kind of political leader and potentially a special prophet or some kind of deliverer of the nation of Israel. If Jesus is being kind of hyped up as this leader, this Son of Man, this Messiah that will save his people, of course he's going to be hearing some things that make him feel a certain way, make him think certain things. It's more likely that those would lead him to believing he is some kind of divine figure or has divine authority than to sheer lunacy. And even if he is completely wrong about this thing, that doesn't mean he can't be intellectually honest and capable with other claims and teachings he's making. C.S. Lewis says he can't be a lunatic because look at what he does. He quotes scripture in a time where just being able to read was somewhat of a miraculous feat. Like, this man is clearly intellectually developed, and I would agree. I think the historical Jesus is pretty wise guy, can quote scripture, at least as he's portrayed in the Gospels, pretty easily. Just because he's wrong about one thing, that doesn't mean he has to be completely wrong about everything else he says. So Lewis's arguments here just seem to fail, at least to me. I don't know about you. Secondly, he says he cannot be a liar because he promoted love, self-sacrifice, service, and he didn't seem to gain much out of that. Excuse me? He didn't gain much out of that? Remember, we just went over this whole Son of Man thing, right? He was supposed to be this political leader that would defeat the Roman authorities and lead the nation of Israel back to their rightful place. He didn't have anything, nothing to gain. And well, yes, he was definitely crucified. I agree. I think most people would agree that he was crucified under the Roman Empire. That doesn't mean he was given any chance to recant or anything like that. If you know apologia, that's one of his martyrdom criteria. They must be given the chance to recant. And for some cases, I disagree with him, but here I think that makes all the difference, right? If he was gaining enough political power and influence, which he clearly had, people just giving them their donkeys, people laying down their robes and palms in front of them, palm leaves, like this man was celebrated among his people. He would lie for that influence, that power, that fame. Even if he was crucified, like, yes, he would seem to want to recant for that. Most people would. Almost everyone probably would in the face of death. There's no evidence he was given a chance to recant, at least not in the traditional manner. In fact, he might not have even been still claiming to be God when he was crucified and put on trial, but again, that's a whole separate video. I'll make that next. But despite the fallacies in Lewis's arguments, perhaps his overall idea is still a good one. Maybe the process of elimination is the way that we should come to a conclusion about who Jesus was. Let's pretend that, for a second, it seems that C.S. Lewis's arguments here actually have some weight, hold some water. Well, a good way to tell if he's representing all possibilities here, which is the only way you and I could tell if this is actually a good way to come to the claim of Jesus' divinity as true or false, is to reorder the Lord, Liar, Lunatic. See, this trilemma is normally presented as, well, he was not lying, well, he was not a lunatic, therefore he must be Lord. And these arguments for liar and lunatic actually aren't that great, as we saw, but pretend they're pretty good, like pretty solid. What happens if we change the order? What if we say, well, it doesn't seem like he was a lunatic? Okay? But instead of saying, well, it doesn't seem like he was a liar, let's say, well, it doesn't seem like he was Lord. Would that then follow that he's a liar? See, it seems like these don't add up to 100% of the possibilities about Jesus of Nazareth. Seems like there are more. Certainly so, if you can reorder these possibilities and come to a different conclusion. Seems like we have 3 potentially equally unlikely possibilities and are excluding a wide variety of others. And you might ask, well, Brecken, what are the other possibilities then? And I would say, that's a good question. Well, first off, he could have been honestly mistaken, as I put forward earlier, about his divinity while still being intellectually capable and very developed in other areas. For example, Alexander the Great, who we are pretty sure was not insane in at least his military conquest, did believe he was divine. At least until I think he died of a fever and like 33 years old or so. That doesn't mean he wasn't able to go on and conquer much of the world and create one of the largest empires known to man. Also, I'm sure you've heard, if not, maybe you've not, that's alright too. There is a 4th L here, which is legend, which I have been constantly alluding to. Perhaps A, either Jesus didn't claim he was God, or B, maybe he did claim he was God, but the details kind of got fudged. Because remember, these Gospels are kind of hearsay accounts written down decades after the fact. So we gotta ask, which is more plausible, that maybe they got something wrong in outlining all of these possibilities and the details of Jesus' life, or they're inerrant and Jesus is actually divine, assuming even that C.S. Lewis's argument holds water. So yeah, let me know if what I said makes sense, is correct, maybe it's flawed in some way, so yeah, let me know what you think about that. Thanks for watching. I just think this argument isn't really as great as a lot of people make it sound. Yeah, like, sub if you want, I'll respond to every comment. Thank you.